This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Scott. How was your week?
My week, as you know, was quite eventful.
Yes, and for our listeners, and I want to let them know, first of all, that Scott is in tip-top perfect health. But this week was the week Scott went and had a colonoscopy, which most adults at the age of 50 are asked to do by their physicians, as a routine preventative measure. And you went and had one, and it turned out okay. And you had the kind where they put you in twilight sleep, and then you wake up afterwards. And
yes, and I had it done at St. Pat's Hospital, second floor, same-day surgery. It was really, as I said, is uneventful. I mean,
yeah, it's more terrifying to think about. Although I do have to tell you, I've had both kinds. I've had the twilight sleep one, which I liked,
right, and
then I had what's called a virtual colonoscopy, where they fill you with air, and you feel like a piñata, and they say lie there for 20 minutes and don't move, and you feel like you're gonna explode, literally. It was probably the closest a man could feel to the what pregnancy must feel like, and then they do it with a CT scan. So I've had both of them. I prefer the twilight sleep version.
Yeah, that's a better one, right? Well, which is what I had.
Right. Well, there's some reasons. There's certain. The other one is supposed to be less intrusive. But if they see anything in the first, if they see any abnormality, any bump or anything with the virtual, then they're going to give you the other one anyway.
Absolutely.
But you're perfectly okay and good.
I'm good, and you hit 50 years old, and this is what they tell you to do. They say here you're going to get a colonoscopy, and it took a while to actually get it scheduled and to find the physician.
But it's one
to do
thing
it.
I want to say to our listeners. It's an area of prevention that is extraordinarily well worth getting engaging in, because catching something like colon cancer later on is a brutal experience to go through. I've had friends who have gone through that, and believe me, being early detection in that particular area is critical.
Preventative medicine, right?
So to pivot completely away from...
where are we going?
Well, I wanted to see how you... I didn't have a chance before the show
to
ask how your health was and to share my experience related to it. But we're going to have on the show today KB Brown from Strongwater Mountain Surf Company. And he's kind of created a whole new... segment of the sports industry, right?
He absolutely has.
River surfing, and in particular, mountain river surfing. And we're going to find out all about that. But just hearing about surfing, when I knew he was going to be our guest, it just harkened back to the days of surf music, right?
Yeah.
A very American, all American. I mean, you've never heard it. There's no German surf music, right? There's no Japanese surfing songs. There's not
until we actually introduced it, and then they imitated us.
Well, it happened, it came and went very quickly, although it has lingered on. I mean, you back in the 60s, obviously you had the Beach Boys and the Safaris and Jan and Dean, and I guess the godfather of it was Dick Dale and the Deltones.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of started that off. And then probably the remnants today of surfing music are probably like Jack Johnson and Weezer, maybe, or Reef. There are some groups around that still carry that same kind of harmony and that same kind of feel to it. Every time I listen to Jack Johnson, I think he's sitting on the beach smoking a J, listening to the Beach Boys while he's recording his music. So it's but it really came and went very quickly. And at one point, it was right up there with Motown and the girl groups and the British Invasion as a really competitive music form.
Absolutely, a genre. And, and when Brian Wilson came back and he did his Smile, his retrospective, right? And they revisited Planet, Planet Waves. No, I'm thinking of the Dylan record. Anyway, Pet Sounds.
Pet Sounds.
When they go back and they revisit that many years later, it's still as vital today as it was when it was created. And
the sounds and harmony, if you go back and listen to it, are very, not only experimental for the time, but hold up very well. Now on Sirius Radio we have the new Beatles channel for the first time.
Right.
So you start listening to the Beatles, and digitally, remastered and put out there, and their music and harmonies are so, great and tight and have held up over 50 years. The same thing with those, Surfer Girl, Surfing Safari, Surfing USA, and all that kind of stuff was very very strong melodically.
Absolutely, and it spawned. What did it spawn? It spawned television programming, Gidget. It spawned
a lot of movies. There was a whole series of surfing movies.
Exactly. And
which look very dated when you go see Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon on the beach. What does make you want to go to the beach, that's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what. When we get KB in here, we could ask him what's 2017's version of Gidget and
what kind of music is he listening to when they're doing their surfing on the river waves, when they're down there at Brennan's Wave in Missoula.
And that's not the only place he goes. We'll ask him where else he goes. He goes all over the region, and quite frankly, I think all over the world to river surf. And let's also talk to him a little bit about, surfing is in many ways not just an activity and a recreation, but it's a style. It's an influence, right? From music to art to...
And it's a lifestyle.
Archaeology or
go to Venice
architecture.
Beach in L.A., and there's a lot of people from 15 to 70 that are into the whole culture.
Yeah, it's like
the
hip-hop.
beach culture. Yeah, exactly.
It's like hip-hop in a way. And so it's we'll have a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. And he's got a growing business, and it's an interesting business because it's on the cusp of going to the next level. And let's find out what his plans are, and let's find out how maybe we could be helpful to him.
Great. That was a good show today.
Okay, great. You are listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, proudly sponsored and supported by Don Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Right after the break, we'll be here with KB Brown from Strongwater. The dudes are here. Yeah. We are back with our guest, KB.
KB, welcome to What Do You Know?
What do I know?
And I know very little, and probably a lot of our listeners know very little about Strongwater Mountain Surf Company. So tell me about the genesis of the company, but also of the niche in the sporting world that you're involved with.
Right. So Strongwater Mountain Surf Company is super unique. We are pioneering a brand new sport called river surfing. So just like people surf in the ocean, we are surfing in the river. And just to take that one step further, our motto is surf the earth. We build surfboards for surfing on snow. The snow melts into the river. We build surfboards for surfing in the river. And the river flows to the ocean, and we surf the ocean.
And how come it hasn't happened till now?
That is a good question. The more I do this, I ask myself that all the time.
I mean, the rivers only have conditions to do at certain times of the year, or?
Well, a lot of it, I think, kind of stems from, how we grew up viewing the rivers, especially here in the United States. I know I grew up over in the Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area, and growing up, we were taught to stay out of the river. It's dangerous. There's currents. There's undercurrents. And a lot of that is just, it stems from fear. It stems from being uneducated about the rivers. And usually back then when accidents were happening in the river, it involved alcohol or something like that. And it just created this general fear, stay out of the river. And we're kind of trying to change all that.
Well, in Missoula, as many of our listeners know, we've created a wave to surf.
Brennan's Wave.
Right, Brennan's Wave, right in the right downtown, and people can watch, and it's easy access. Is that what is needed in other communities? Do you have to create, the conditions to allow this to happen?
It definitely helps, that's for sure. So like in the Missoula area, we have 12 different waves that we surf within a 2-hour driving distance throughout the year. But Brennan's Wave, obviously being right in the heart of downtown Missoula, gets all the attention. There's events going on down in the park, so on any given day, there's hundreds to thousands of people that are getting to witness this. So, something like that is going to be, obviously a great economical advantage to a community, and then it's going to, obviously be a great advantage to building a sport like river surfing.
KB, are there other cities where there's a wave created like Brennan? I mean, how many are there around?
You bet. So Missoula was one of the first to get such a thing. Reno, Nevada was before Missoula. And theirs is actually, so Brennan's Wave is actually 2 different waves that we know. Reno, Nevada is roughly, I think, a mile and a half of basically Brennan's Wave type features.
So they created
that. So
water feature there.
But Missoula now, basically we're kind of being used as the example or template or model, however you want to phrase that, for other towns and cities. And we're starting to see these things pop up in places like Ohio, Georgia, so like anywhere where there's a town with a river flowing through it, you can essentially create this Brennan's Wave type thing. And this thing's not only going on right here in Missoula, Montana, but all over the world.
So can a river be have enough flow all year round, or is it seasonal? Or does that depend on where it is?
Really the waves can be designed to match the water flow. And
Right.
That's kind of where the engineers and all that kind of come into play. But, what's nice about Missoula is the Clark Fork River is essentially a high volume river. So we always have, a fairly large amount of water, even in the middle of the summer. 1,000 CFS is a good amount of water. It in the springtime, obviously, with the runoff and all that, the way everything's set up here is kind
Right.
of the bigger, more powerful waves and such are going to happen during that time of the year. But really, these waves can be designed to match whatever the water
Sure.
flow is.
And in a
that
town like
community.
Missoula, how many active people are engaged in river surfing?
We've got, over 100 people right here in Missoula. And like I said, this is relatively new. It's literally growing,
How new
by
is
the
it?
10s to 20s every day. We're doing lessons. It's just, it's
Well, that's
a
interesting.
fast growing thing.
Why are the lessons different than you would have for ocean surfing?
It's, they're similar, but the dynamics of the wave in the river is different than the ocean.
Right. Do you
So
need different equipment? Is the board different?
there are some differences. So I just did an interview with Inertia Surfing Magazine, which is a big surfing publication. And I just talked about this because they're trying to educate ocean surfers on river surfing. So, one thing when we first got started in river surfing, it was like, oh, what are the ocean guys going to think of this? It was like, oh, this is stupid. Like, go to the ocean and surf a real wave. Well, it's been actually really accepted by the ocean surfing community. It's kind of like the cool new thing, even amongst them. And so with this Inertia
I
magazine,
noticed, for example, when I was on the coast recently, there were hundreds of surfers out there, and you watched them, and over a period of like 20, 30 minutes, they maybe only caught one or two. Most of the time they're paddling and getting set up. In river surfing, it's continuous. You always have a wave.
and that's where the translation comes in there. So like river surfing can actually make you an outstanding ocean surfer.
That's what I would think.
There's some basic fundamentals. Respect the river, respect the ocean. That's like the main thing. How are things working when an ocean surfer shows up to a new break or a new beach? They watch first. Where's the rip to get out? What's forming these waves? Is it a reef? Is it a sandbar? In the river, it's the same type of deal. How do I get on this wave? Is there a bridge pillar behind? Is this a safe wave to surf?
So you were born in Idaho?
I was actually born in Brainerd, Minnesota, but I've lived in Idaho since I was like 2 years old.
So when did you get into surfing? You were into ocean surfing before this,
Well,
right?
I'd gone on some family trips, and growing up in Coeur d'Alene, my best friend since second grade, they were from San Diego, and his dad was a big surfer, and I went on some ocean surfing trips. But I really didn't become a surfer until the river.
Is that right? And how long have you been doing this?
I've been
River
surfing surfing in the river now. We've been doing it, it's been quite a while now, maybe like 13 years or something. But
Really?
we did it for years and years without even like thinking anything of it.
And what were you using to river surf? What type of boards?
We were just using regular ocean surfboards, but
You found spots where there was
we
current.
we found some spots, and to be, to kind of lead into where we're going here. When we opened up Strongwater, it was to be a kayak shop, but we called ourselves Surf Shop for the Mountains. And we were surfing surfboards at the time, but we really didn't think anything of it.
Right.
And myself, I got into the sport of kayaking when it was relatively new and the boats were still kind of long. And it was during a time when the boats were going from kind of long to short, and it was this progressive era in kayaking. And at that time, I'd seen a few people drag some old surfboards out of the rafters and take them down to the river and try to surf a couple of these waves. But it was a time when kayaking was like super progressive, and it seemed like the kayaking was the right tool for the job in the river.
Right.
And when we got Brennan's Wave built here in town, we started giving surfing more of a chance.
Right. Well, when it first got built, I thought it was really for kayaking. And then all of a sudden, walk by one day and there's guys on surfboards and say, well, that looks really cool.
And you guys started the river surfing. Nobody was doing river surfing before this.
No, we are... I like to say pioneers. I hate to say the first because there's always going to be somebody that comes out of the woodwork or whatever,
Right.
But,
right.
We're pioneers of this whole thing. We're really the first people to take it and make it something. We're the first people to start designing and building boards specifically for it.
Are the boards smaller?
Somewhat. So I mean, basically, just like
they're more like snowboards than they are the surfboards.
It all comes down to this design. Just like different ocean boards are designed for different types of waves and different this and that. That's basically what happened. Is we were riding all these different ocean shapes in the river, and it was at a time we were actually selling a ton of. It was when paddleboarding. We also introduced paddleboards inland. We were not only the first in Missoula, but the first anywhere inland to sell paddleboards. And we had kind of started making a name for ourselves in the surf industry just because we were selling a lot of these paddleboards. And the company who we were selling a lot of these paddleboards for, they also distribute surfboards, and they knew we were really getting into river surfing. And they were like, hey, let's make you guys a surfboard. And it wasn't that great of a board, but it had our logos and names on it. And we were like, yeah, this is cool. We kind of were running with it. We rode the board from like June until October, sent it back to them, and then January, I got a hold of them, and they had basically just stuck the board in our rep's office, and we're like, we're not really sure if there's a market or anything like that. And then that's when I said to my business partner, hey, we're the ones doing this. I think I can build these things. Let's just do this ourselves.
Sure.
And then that's how we started making the surfboards.
And how many have you made, and how many of these do you sell?
Yeah, so it is a hot deal, and that's really where we're coming to now. Is we've evolved from.
We're in at the ground floor, Scott. I could hear this right now.
Yep.
Go ahead.
We really started out, like I said, as a kayak shop, which is chapter 1, and then chapter 2 was getting rid of the kayaks and being a surf-specific shop, and building the surfboards. And now chapter 3 is really becoming the brand, and we've got a huge demand for these things, and that's where we're at right now, is trying to meet the demand. We're trying to get ourselves in a place where we can mass produce our boards, because I can only make so many so fast by hand. Since the day I started making boards, I've never been less than 7 back ordered.
Right.
And I'm making them as fast
in general? How much do they cost?
Right now they're $700, and that's a really good deal. And part of that is we're trying to build the sport, but we're also trying to stay on par with kind of the cost of what a surfboard would be at the ocean and things like that.
Right, and what are they made out of? Are they fiberglass?
So, yep, they're made out of fiberglass, the custom boards. They're made specifically to the rider, to their location. We can
their weight.
Kind of weight, ability. We can kind of factor in all these things. We can give them, custom graphics and color schemes. And,
really
it's just
cool.
a really cool thing.
It is.
You can put it just hanging on your wall in your house.
And
when you're not I mean, it's an art object, in fact.
And
I love your logo, by the way. Our listeners can't see it, but it's an anchor with Surf the Earth on it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
We'll make a nice tattoo.
I got it.
How'd I know?
That is a tattoo.
That's great for you. So do you do the same thing with these boards? I mean, do you wax them just like you wax surfboards? And I mean, are they ocean boards?
Yep. So we did that for years, and now we're actually using traction, front foot traction on the boards, which is it's been around in surfing for quite a while. The tail pad that goes on the the tail of the board to put your foot, so it just kind of gives you traction. And traditionally, and still for the most part, people on the ocean are using surf wax, but it's kind of a newer movement in ocean surfing. And what kind of makes river surfing kind of a cool thing is we're not necessarily held to the same confines as some of the guys in the ocean. We can kind of experiment with some of these new materials and new products, and it's not so wacky,
And the other thing to me, maybe I'm wrong. It's just my, gut instinct. It seems like river surfing is in some ways safer than ocean surfing, right? You're not getting hit by big waves, that are coming on you. You obviously don't have shark attacks in rivers.
But you got rocks.
You got rocks. I mean,
but
you
rocks,
also have rocks in the ocean too.
It really is about the same. And that's where it really comes down to what I started off with back there a little bit was respect. It comes down to common sense, respect, know before you go. And those are all sayings that you're going to find. When in doubt, don't go out, know before you go. If you ever go to like Hawaii or some of the major surf breaks, you're going to see signs like that on the beach.
Yeah.
Was that right?
And really the river, it's the same thing. And that's what kind of makes river surfing.
Well, you got an undertow like you do in the ocean.
And what makes river surfing cool, like ocean surfing, is you get this connection to the power of the water and Mother Nature and whatnot versus like a indoor wave pool, which is maybe kind of soulless. River surfing and ocean surfing share a common soul value to them.
Is this bringing back surf music? I mean, if you're having an event and a party, are you playing Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and Dick Dale and Deltones and all
Well,
that?
I mean, we're
What
into
are
it.
you
We're
playing?
into
What
it,
are
you know.
you?
But
What's the music now that would fit this?
we like stick figure and
Right.
some of the modern reggae style music.
Right.
What about Weezer?
Yeah, Weezer's awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, here's the other
You
thing.
take your car to work, I'll take my board.
Yeah.
The thing that freaks me out is, but it's also great, is when you're floating down the river and you get up to Brennan's Wave. These are the only guys facing the other direction.
I know.
Other than paddleboarders, they're the only ones facing the other direction, coming at you.
Well, it became
And that's the big thing for the ocean guys that freaks them out is like they're just like they go to stand up and all this water's rushing at them and they're like, whoa,
Well, there's
this
also-
is
They're used to
weird.
going the other direction.
Yeah.
There's also sort of a permutation of this. There are the wave pools,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen
Right.
in amusement parks where they do a
Yep.
similar thing as yoga, and your equipment would be applicable to that as well,
on
right?
some of those for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yep. There's
of the
all
big wave
different
parks.
types. There's kind of different, a few different companies out there that are building those parks, and some of them are made to ride more normal boards with fins, and some of them are made more for like a skim board without
Right.
fins.
So
type
here's my
application.
first marketing suggestion for you, right live on the air in real time. You need to take some of your product out to Vegas to the park there, because what happens in Vegas, you have people coming from all over the country,
Right.
and they'll end up going to one of the wave pools there.
Where's the way? Like where? Like at the Mandalay Bay?
One of Mandalay,
Really?
somewhere that have a big
Oh,
wave.
they've got them all. They've got them on cruise ships. They've got
Yeah, I mean, but a place like that,
Is that
the reason I
right?
like Vegas as a test market is people are coming from all over the world to Vegas. Then they see
Get
your
closer to the
product,
mic.
and then they go back and they want it.
Yep. No, I
Let me
agree.
do a quick ID.
Sure.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO. Our guest is KB Brown from Strongwater. We are proudly sponsored and supported by Don Maddox Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Quick question that I'd like to ask. Within 2 hours of here, you said there are 13 places.
12 different waves.
12 different waves. Where are they?
So,
Give us some secrets.
yeah, so a lot of it's going to happen where there's whitewater. So the Albertson Gorge, for instance, a popular rafting
cool one.
destination. Yep. That's going to be a place where we find a lot of waves. The Lochsaw River over in
Lochsaw,
Idaho has
right.
one of the best river surfing waves in the entire world on it.
How far down?
About 2 hours from here.
2 hours? Got it.
Yep.
Closer than California.
Yeah.
But,
That's amazing. That's what's
you
so
know,
amazing
most
about
of them
this.
are within 30 minutes of town.
Do you guys really like? It's funny when you started to talk about like Strongwater. And by the way, where does the name Strongwater come from?
It actually comes from the word skookumchuck, which we used to go up to the Sunshine Coast just above the city of Vancouver and surf this
Right.
wave on an inlet. And it's just a native word, the skookumchuck, which means strong water. And
We just used the strong water.
we stayed at a campground, and we got our name from that.
It's amazing. Are you amazed, by the way, when you head up that way to Vancouver and north on your way to Whistler, just how many, like the kite surfing community and the paddleboard community and the river surfing community there? I mean, that's an incredible area for recreation.
Well, there's so many different outdoor activities that are
in that area.
in that area. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I want to get back to one point earlier, which I think is really important. The fact that in a place like here at Brennan's Wave or at going up in Canada or the inlet where this is going on, or even
Right.
down in the Lochsaw,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting a continuous. You have to be pretty skilled to continuously surf. I mean, usually when you're watching ocean surfing, they surf a wave,
Mm-hmm.
you paddle back out, you rest. This is probably in some ways more demanding than, because as long as you want to stay out there, you're going to get you're going to get the thrill and the experience and the athletic
Yep.
need, and the athletic skill you need to do it continuously.
Yeah, I mean, just for a good example, in one, we call it a session when we go out and surf.
Right.
So in 1 2-hour session, we surf about as many waves, or if you want to say wave time, we get about as much wave time in one session as an ocean surfer might get. For example, we have a high school kid here, we call him Groms, but he started surfing in the river, and now he lives in Santa Cruz, teaching surfing in Santa Cruz, and surfing with all the big dogs there, and he's one of the better ocean surfers right now in Santa Cruz, and he learned to surf in the river.
Sure.
And I think that's the real future for this, is we're going to start to see surfers coming from the river and actually reaching pro levels in the ocean.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about river etiquette. Like, what's good river etiquette?
River etiquette is, again, it all comes down to kind of understanding everything. One thing that's different in the river is in the lineup. So the lineup is an actual line in the river. It's single file, guy falls, next man up.
Got it.
In the ocean, it's kind of like first come, best guy gets the wave. It's a little more edgy, and that's where a lot of the stuff you hear about in the ocean,
of a
kind of
good
the
movie.
negative stuff.
Yeah, the movie.
comes
Yeah,
from.
the plot for a movie.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So in the river community, the vibe in the river is like super friendly. So everybody's kind of helping each other out. And what's really cool about it is the best surfer out there falls down, and the guy trying it for his first time falls down. So there isn't like this big like macho, or it's just kind of it's just good camaraderie.
And how does the skill set and the abilities fit together with skiing, snow skiing,
Oh man,
snowboarding?
Again, just like I said, the snow melts into the rivers. So as soon as the ski season is over, what are you gonna do? And it's not just that it works with the snow sports. I mean, surfing and fly fishing. We're looking at doing a commercial here in a few weeks with a fly rod company to kind of build that lifestyle of just like in Hawaii. Most of the best surfers are also the best spear fishermen and free divers, and they call themselves watermen. We really encompass that same mentality right here in the river and mountains.
Huh. Yeah, well, it is the waterman, and it's also the piece that fits together like in a family experience.
Mm-hmm.
The grandfather can go fly fishing. The dad and the son, depending on the age, can do this. It's not just men and women. Girls, and I mean, how many women are doing this?
It's probably the fastest growing segment right now here locally,
Right.
and I would say probably globally right now. And like I said, the camaraderie is so good. There isn't any like edginess to it.
Yeah.
Everybody's super encouraging.
And where I would guess it was Australia, but you can tell me where else in the world is this taking hold really strongly?
So we always like to think of Missoula, Montana as kind of like the North Shore Hawaii of river surfing, and
Right.
then the other hotbed for river surfing is actually Munich, Germany. They have a canal.
Really?
Yep,
That's
that
cool.
runs right down Munich, and it is like they got a huge scene there. And then it's filtered all throughout Europe. Europe is very progressive right now, building these features in their rivers. And
What did you show us a video once? Was it Slovenia?
Slovakia.
Slovakia?
Yeah, Bratislava. Yeah, and they've got this great, the government's actually built like this huge recreation facility for, both a river surfing setup, kayaking. It dumps into a reservoir where they have some wakeboarding. They've got beach volleyball, and
it's a whole
bar,
inland beach
and-
culture. You
yeah,
don't
it's
have
a
to be
beach-
by the ocean.
Exactly.
Is there any downside to the river from all this activity?
Not really. So like that's kind of the whole basis for this is to, if they're like, for instance, Brendan's Wave downtown, we've been talking a lot about it. So like that, we're not talking about going into Glacier Park and these pristine rivers and just dropping these waves in there. The whole goal behind these man-made waves is to touch areas that have been heavily touched by man already.
Right.
It's a broken weir, it's a dam, it's something,
Is there a lot of licensing and
permitting, all that
permitting,
kind
all
of
that?
stuff. But we want to go in and clean up the river and put these features in and make the river better for the fish, better for the wildlife, better for the economy. It's a win-win for the whole community.
And what if you go into a river and you're going to create this feature?
Mm-hmm.
What does it cost? What would a community be? What did Brendan's Wave cost?
Brendan's Wave was like $300,000, and we're looking at for something like that in today's economy is probably going to cost around $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And because how much work does it require? I mean, how long did it take?
A lot of the costs are in design. You're paying for the engineering, and then the permits and everything involved with that. It's, to be honest, like these things should probably only cost like a few $1,000s, but they're costing
But
millions.
what's the return on that investment?
So in one, basically one event, it's paid off.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Well, you can see it. People coming downtown or wherever the feature is in any community,
Right.
and then they're hanging out all day, and there's and
We have, our wave is right off the side of Karis Park there, so you've got out to lunch, you've got downtown tonight, you got different things going on in the park, and the wave attracts more people down to those events.
Right.
When I would hosted some different events down in the park.
so they're competition events. I mean, they're already in the industry.
in the surfing, because it's a new thing, it's a little iffy, but back when kayaking was a little more popular, we hosted the U.S. team trials here in town,
Right.
things like that. And then I just did like some Thursday night events down there when Out to Dinner was going on. And the vendors down there are making 10 times the amount of money when we got something going on versus when we don't.
KB, talk to us a little bit about the interested parties. Like, there are people that are now coming specifically to Missoula, seeking KB out and Strongwater out, and want to get a piece of the action in terms of be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you just did a film with Red Bull, correct?
Yeah, we had actually the best waterman in the world, Kai Lenny, was just here.
Right.
Red Bull got a hold of us and let us know that he was in Montana, and he's filming a video project that is 2 years in the making, and river surfing is going to be featured in the video partly. And he was out, trying out some boards from the ocean. One thing real popular in the ocean right now are these hydrofoil boards. So he was one of the first people to try that out on the river.
I've seen those.
As well as he spent 80% of the day on one of the boards I make and was just blown away. And his dad actually purchased one for him.
Have you seen these hydrofoil boards?
No.
They have a long pipe off the back, and they have a pellet. You're basically hydrofoiling along the water.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You're riding, the board is in the air, and the hydrofoil is riding the smooth water under the rough water.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it really looks cool when you see it.
But who else? I mean, there are other, like you just were on CNN was it yesterday?
Well, we've been on CNN, but we actually just got recontacted by CNN yesterday, and we're going to be filming end of July, 1st of August for a show on CNN. And
about recreation on the river, or
about river surfing.
River surfing.
Yeah, about river surfing. The host is going to come out. He's going to try it himself, and we're going to get him out on the water.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, let me ask you this: if you put lights up, could you do it at night?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, that's one of the coolest times to do it. We've actually done some fun, not a contest, but just some kind of free surf type events under the lights, and it's super cool.
It really is. I mean, it
has a lot of applications when you start thinking about it.
Exactly. And what other companies have contacted you, because you have relationships as a store owner? You have relationships with O'Neill and with others.
Mm-hmm.
What is their take on what you're doing?
So that's kind of happening right now. This is the big year where the surf industry is really taking notice.
Right.
We've been building, like I said, we're pioneers. We're the first people really to take and do something with this, and we've been building, and we've been talking to these companies and telling them this and that, and this is going to be the next cool thing. And like, this is the year where it's kind of like starting to come together, and like all these big time pros are starting to, not just here in Missoula, but other river waves as well, and different communities are showing up and surfing these waves. Jerry Lopez lives in Bend, Oregon. Bend, Oregon has a wave now. And
Bend would be the kind of town that makes sense.
And,
right?
and the name Jerry Lopez, I mean, he's great for the sport because he brings a ton of, with his background and everything, he brings a ton of legitimacy to it.
Sure.
So if he says it's cool.
Tell our listeners who Jerry Lopez is.
Jerry Lopez is Mr. Pipeline, one of the most, famous and well-known surfers ever to surf.
Sure. So now let's say
Legend.
the business, so you're in a year where this is getting noticed big time.
Yeah.
You got CNN, you got Red Bull, you got all these things. What do you need? What are you missing to take your business and your idea and your leadership in river surfing to the next level?
We need product. Our problem right now isn't sales. Our problem is delivering the product.
Right. And does that require more money?
That requires more money.
Yeah,
the right
that's what I
connections,
figured.
the right people, and
buying at volume discounts and having money for inventory and hiring more people and training them.
That'll be part of it, but even more so, like where we're at right now. I mean, for about 2 years now, we've kind of been starting to develop our brand. So one thing with Strongwater, like I said, we started out as a kayak shop, and then we started building the boards custom, and now we are becoming this brand.
Right.
So we need to start mass producing these boards. So a couple years ago. And everything we've kind of been doing has just been happening. And I've got this saying, I learned to play it, or I took guitar lessons one time, and the instructor got on me, and I was like, I'm trying, man, I'm trying. And he was like, that's what you're doing wrong. And I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And he explained to me how there's a difference between working hard and trying. And one thing we've been doing at Strongwater is we just work hard, and all these things have kind of been happening. We really haven't been trying to do anything. And 2 years ago, we had an opportunity with some connections in China to kind of start working on mass producing these boards, and then we didn't really have a plan, and we were using our own funds, and it just kind of got too much, and we got in over our heads a little bit.
Sure.
So now we're at this place where we're kind of trying to like reorganize all that. We have a new plan, and now we're looking to, get with somebody that can kind of take this thing to where it needs to go.
Sure.
And
So it's like strategic funding.
Basically we're looking to be like
Well, you need
the
a
Burton
strategic
snowboards.
investor.
The
Yes.
Burton snowboards of river surfing is
Sure.
what we're looking to become.
When we were growing up back at East New Jersey, a guy named Rodney Smith, in 1982, came we used to go on high school ski trips, and on one of the ski trips, he was the only guy without his skis. He had a board. It was a Burton board, and everybody was like, "Rod, what do you got there?" Like, it was amazing. Like, everybody gravitated to him, and he was actually skiing with us. He was snowboarding while we were skiing. And there were no bindings, there were no boots. He was just literally on this thing, and it was a revelatory moment. And he came up. He actually was a leader, right?
Right.
He started Zoo York, the
Oh, yeah.
brand Zoo York.
Yeah, the
That's
skateboard
Rodney.
brand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
skateboard brand. That's Rodney Smith.
Right.
That's a guy I grew up with in Metuchen, New Jersey, and he was the first.
I know that.
Well, the
I've
other
heard
reason-
that name.
Yeah, he's a great
I was
guy.
going to get back to this with one of the other things you need to do for that whole mass production is because you want to start out with children. Your kids want to do this, right? I mean,
You bet.
and
You're hitting on something great here.
yeah, I know. And kids aren't going to spend $700. Their parents aren't going to buy them a board for $700. So it has to have sort of like a juvenile. Maybe they will, but but if there's a juvenile version, a starter version that would get people into this at an earlier age,
So
then
that
you're
is
building your
exactly
pipeline.
what we're going for. So right now we're selling foam boards from like different Ocean branded companies right now for
Right.
that product. And that's the main product we're looking to develop right now is a foam surfboard that sells for between $300 and $350. So what we tell our customers when they come in, because surfing, it's all new. And, people in California that grew up surfing, you just kind of learn how to treat a fiberglass surfboard,
Right.
It's fragile. It's not, here in the mountains, we're used to like kayaks and things being made out of plastic, throwing them in the
Bounce
back of the
around.
truck, throwing them on the rocks, that type of thing. So you kind of got to learn how to maintain and treat your equipment and that type of
Right.
thing. Plus just get used to using it, things like that. So we sell these foam boards. So that's really what we're looking to develop is our shape of a board that we've designed into
Right.
this foam product. And what we always tell our customers too is, your first board isn't going to be your last board. So get
Right.
this foam board to get started,
Right.
and then go from there.
And for people that are visiting town, you rent them? Do you rent
Oh
them?
yeah, we rent, we do lessons.
But it's $700 well spent if you're going to buy one.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then
for
you
sure.
step up. You get the foam board, and like once you get your skills going, like I can literally watch people out on the wave and be like, all right, it's time for them to get a custom board because I can see the foam versions holding them back at that point.
I'm sorry, finish your thought.
I mean, that being said, it's not just the board, but anyway.
Perfect. You are listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO. Our guest is KB from Strongwater. Right after this break, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more local about what's going on here in Missoula and how we can actually celebrate all the gifts that we have through the river. And let's talk a little bit more about that. We're also going to be joined by Blake Nicolazzo right after this on What Do You Know. Arnie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Scott. How was your week?
My week, as you know, was quite eventful.
Yes, and for our listeners, and I want to let them know, first of all, that Scott is in tip-top perfect health. But this week was the week Scott went and had a colonoscopy, which most adults at the age of 50 are asked to do by their physicians, as a routine preventative measure. And you went and had one, and it turned out okay. And you had the kind where they put you in twilight sleep, and then you wake up afterwards, and
Yes, and I had it done at St. Pat's Hospital, second floor, same-day surgery. It was really, as I said, is uneventful. I mean,
yeah, it's more terrifying to think about. Although I do have to tell you, I've had both kinds. I've had the twilight sleep one, which I liked,
Right.
and then I had what's called a virtual colonoscopy, where they fill you with air, and you feel like a piñata, and they say lie there for 20 minutes and don't move, and you feel like you're gonna explode, literally. It was probably the closest a man could feel to the what pregnancy must feel like, and then they they do it with a CT scan. So I've had both of them. I prefer the Twilight sleep version.
Yeah, that's a better one, right?
Well,
Which is what I had.
Right. Well, there's some reasons. There's certain. The other one is supposed to be less intrusive. But if they see anything in the first, if they see any abnormality, any bump or anything with the virtual, then they're going to give you the other one anyway.
Absolutely.
But you're perfectly okay and good.
I'm good, and you hit 50 years old, and this is what they tell you to do. They say here you're going to get a colonoscopy, and it took a while to actually get it scheduled and to find the physician.
But it's one
to do
thing
it.
I want to say to our listeners. If it's an area of prevention that is extraordinarily well worth getting engaging in, because catching something like colon cancer later on is a brutal experience to go through. I've had friends who have gone through that, and believe me, being early detection in that particular area is critical.
Preventative medicine, right?
So to pivot completely away from...
where are we going?
Well, I wanted to see how you... I didn't have a chance before the show
to
ask how your health was and to share my experience related to it. But we're going to have on the show today KB Brown from Strongwater Mountain Surf Company. And he's kind of created a whole new... segment of the sports industry, right?
He absolutely has.
River surfing, and in particular, mountain river surfing. And we're going to find out all about that. But just hearing about surfing, when I knew he was going to be our guest, it just harkened back to the days of surf music, right?
Yeah.
A very American, all American. I mean, you've never heard it. There's no German surf music, right? There's no Japanese surfing songs. There's not
until we actually introduced it, and then they imitated us.
Well, it happened, it came and went very quickly, although it has lingered on. I mean, you back in the 60s, obviously you had the Beach Boys and the Safaris and Jan and Dean, and I guess the godfather of it was Dick Dale and the Deltones.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of started that off. And then probably the remnants today of surfing music are probably like Jack Johnson and Weezer, maybe, or Reef. There are some groups around that still carry that same kind of harmony and that same kind of feel to it. Every time I listen to Jack Johnson, I think he's sitting on the beach smoking a J, listening to the Beach Boys while he's recording his music. So it's but it really came and went very quickly. And at one point, it was right up there with Motown and the girl groups and the British Invasion as a really competitive music form.
Absolutely, a genre. And, and when Brian Wilson came back and he did his Smile, his retrospective, right? And they revisited Planet, what is it? Planet Waves. No, I'm thinking of the Dylan record. Anyway, Pet Sounds.
Pet Sounds.
When they go back and they revisit that many years later, it's still as vital today as it was when it was created. And
the sounds and harmony, if you go back and listen to it, are very, not only experimental for the time, but hold up very well. Now on Sirius Radio we have the new Beatles channel for the first time.
Right.
So you start listening to the Beatles, and digitally, remastered and put out there, and their music and harmonies are so, great and tight and have held up over 50 years. The same thing with those, Surfer Girl and Surfing Safari and Surfing USA and all that kind of stuff was very, very strong melodically.
Absolutely, and it spawned, what did it spawn? It spawned television programming, Gidget. It spawned
a lot of movies. There was a whole series of surfing movies.
Exactly. And
which look very dated when you go see Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon on the beach. What does make you want to go to the beach, that's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we get KB in here, we could ask him what's 2017's version of Gidget. And
what kind of music is he listening to when they're doing their surfing on the river waves, when they're down there at Brennan's Wave in Missoula.
And that's not the only place he goes. We'll ask him where else he goes. He goes all over the region, and quite frankly, I think all over the world to river surf. And let's also talk to him a little bit about, surfing is in many ways not just an activity and a recreation, but it's a style. It's an influence, right? From music to art to...
And it's a lifestyle.
Archaeology or
go to Venice
architecture.
Beach in L.A., and there's a lot of people from 15 to 70 that are into the whole culture.
Yeah, it's like
the
hip-hop.
beach culture. Yeah, exactly.
It's like hip-hop in a way. And so it's we'll have a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. And he's got a growing business, and it's an interesting business because it's on the cusp of going to the next level. And let's find out what his plans are, and let's find out how maybe we could be helpful to him.
Great. Sounds like a good show today.
Okay, great. You are listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, proudly sponsored and supported by Don Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Right after the break, we'll be here with KB Brown from Strongwater. Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290, 1015 FM, and newstalkkgvo.com.